Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome back to my craft room. Today I'm going to show you a different way to sew your hexagons together. Last time I showed you how to do them in what is called a hexagon flower. And then you can take, I don't have my white ones ready yet, but can we just pretend these are white for a minute? You can either sew your flowers together like this, or you can add a border color around and sew them around that way. But in case you don't want to do flowers and you just want to do a quick project, you're just going to take a whole bunch of scraps, nothing matches, it doesn't really matter. When I do things like that and I just need to make something small or I just want to do random, I sew them in strips instead of flowers. It's as simple as taking two of your hexagons. Now you'll notice these don't have any papers in them because I'd had the plastic forms in them, and after I used up the 20 or so I had to pop them out to make more. I've ironed these well to keep the seam going good, and of course they're basted. But you just take two together like this and you stitch them, and then after that one's done you add a third and stitch them, and you can stitch them together as long as you want. Depending on how long your project is, you can do, let's say you're doing a baby quilt, you can do it in 4 quadrants and chunks. Or if you want to, and you're doing a king size quilt, you can do it so that you have like 50 of them if they're 1 inches or 2 inches or whatever they are, and have it so you have the whole length or the whole width of the bed. But these I believe, these were given to me, I believe they were a charm pack. And I think they're like Civil War fabrics or something along those lines. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll turn them into a mug rug or a postcard, a fabric postcard. But I decided to use these as an example because I know these won't be in a big quilt. So I made one strip where I sewed 4 of them together, and then I made another one where I stitched the 5 together. Now for what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to take the 2 of these and I'm going to offset them by 1. And yes, you can tell I really wasn't quite paying attention what I was doing, so I have my greens and my blues together, but it's going to be okay. But you can do it this way, or if you want, let's say you had a black fabric or a light green or a white or a cream. A cream would look really good with these. You can take and add cream border ones to it so that this whole section here would be all cream. Look at that, I still can't get away from the green, huh? So you can either have individual strips of all scrappies, or you can put a linking line of contrast, a coordinating, whichever type of fabric you want. But for today, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I just stitched these 2 together. When I do the lines like this, I definitely like to have the clover clips to hold it together. Because we're not sewing them together like straight on like this evenly, that's why I did 1 line of 5 and 1 line of 4. Because if I'd have done them just, well, you could do them just at 4, but it would be offset like this. You're always going to have, you're going to be working zigzag this way, but I don't know, I just like to do lines of 5 and 4. So you take them, you figure out where your pieces are going to be, and just kind of flip them over. So like I know these 2 edges are going to be together, so I'm going to flip those 2 over, and I'm going to hook that. So I'll put the first one on just to hold it on here. I'll know these 2 are going to go together. And just to keep this from like flopping in the breeze, I'll just stick another clip down here. Just to hold it together and out of the way. So I have my thimble. I have my needle threaded. I went with a gray. I went with a medium gray thread this time because I thought it would kind of disappear with these. As you can see, it really just kind of disappears when you stitch these together. me double check how these are going to go. These two are going to go together. So just like when we sew anything else together, I'm going to put a knot in my first one. Keep this lined up. If you want, this is where you can go ahead and put another clip in just to hold this corner. If you're going to be stitching this much together and doing this much hand stitching, you want to make sure you're going to do things to take the stress and tension out of your hands. You don't want to constantly be having your wrist over like this trying to hold things. So if you can use these clips, paper clips, even like the blue painter's tape, that'll work too. Just something that's not too sticky. A lot of the times if you have masking tape or the blue tape that's a little bit still too sticky for your fabric, if you take it onto the side of your pants or onto another piece of fabric and stick it a couple times, it'll also take away some of that tackiness. So it'll hold your fabric without pulling any of it. Just go ahead, wrap it around twice, give myself a nice little starting knot. Then I'm just going to go through and whip stitch through till this corner. Remember, I'm using my finger to hold the needle and my thumb to stop me from taking too big of a chunk. Now, even though there's no paper in this one, you still have to be careful and not to grab too much and go down too deep. Go through the loop halfway through just to add a little stay knot to make sure if my thread breaks anywhere, my entire row or my entire section of a quilt won't become undone. Once again, I went with a shorter length of my thread. When I did my basting stitches, I went with an arm's length, basically from where I was holding the thread with my finger all the way up to my shoulder, an arm's length. But when I'm doing it this way for actual stitching together, the thread is going through the fabric so much, it kind of frays it a little bit, and its structural strength will diminish a bit, so I want to make sure I don't go through too much. Okay, apparently see this loop here? It is not cooperating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little knot right here in this corner. Since I was already trying to put a knot to stop the corner in the first place, I'll just add an extra one after it so that if anything happens with that weird loop, it'll already be secure. Then I just kind of like to take the loop, just grab a little piece right here in the seam allowance just to kind of hold that loop down and out of the way. You could trim it, you can take it back and all that, but I've secured a knot before the loop and I've secured a knot after, and I'm just keeping the loop out of the way, so I feel confident with that. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my next section, which will be here. Now, since there's nothing in here, I can easily fold this hexagon out of the way. Like I said, I hold it from underneath so I don't get that crooked little wrist thing going on. Put a knot in the beginning there. So even though I had a knot to secure this edge of the corner, and the next one I still like to put another knot because the corners are, I don't know, there's a little bit more fabric there, and it seems to be a structural spot where it's going to get more stress on that spot because that's where all the hexagons are meeting together, where through here you're only having the two edges. Plus, once you get in a habit of doing something, you just do it. Doesn't matter why anymore, right? Halfway, Go ahead and put another little knot there to make sure nothing comes undone. Plus, if something like here where we had that loop, if I decided that I didn't want to have that loop there and it bothered me, I can go ahead and take a nice little thin pair of scissors and trim all that thread along that seam. And I know at the halfway point there's already a secure knot. So instead of taking the whole line of hexagons out, I know I'm only going to have to go about a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch until I get to the next knot, and I can just stop there. If I were making larger hexagons, like if I chose to do a 3, 4, 5-inch hexagon, I would put a knot probably in several different sections. Maybe every half inch or so. Oh my goodness, this thread. That's the thing, sometimes thread will be nice and easy and sometimes it will be stubborn. Ta-da! Okay, so now there's my 2. And I'm just going to keep going on until I'm all the way down at the end, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I went ahead and I stitched all down the zigzag. Of course, it's looking like a little bit of a wrinkled mess, but once it gets hit with an iron, it'll lay nice and flat. You can see some of the stitches here and there, but, you know, overall it's not too bad. Since I was fighting with the thread a lot of the times, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now that you've done the 5 and then the 4, so the next ones you would do would be either a 4 on the bottom, or you'd go back and do another 5 up top. Gosh, stay away from the green, Robin Suzanne, I tell ya. Oh, and look, perfect. Or then you put your 4 down there. So just make yourself a whole bunch of rows of whatever you're going to do, an even and an odd, an even and an odd, and then just keep building up until you get to the size you want. So if you don't want to do all the little flowers and you don't want to do the, you know, the circly type things, this is another way you can do them. Go onto Pinterest and type in EPP or English Paper Piece Hexie projects. There are tons of variations. There are so many different ones. You can get lost on there for hours and hours. And you'll want to make so many different projects. But if you do small projects, you can do all the different kinds. If you decide you want to do a bed quilt, then you're going to probably have to just pick one kind and stick with it. So that's how I sew hexies in a straight line, in rows and columns, instead of doing the flowers. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. If you like this series, go ahead and look up here in the little iCard and you'll see a link where I've made a playlist for all the different EPP series that we're working on right now. If you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe with the little subscribe button down here. And if you want YouTube to notify you when a new video pops up, go ahead and ring that little bell.